Good afternoon, friends. It's February 28th, and it's not even been a full day since the war or the special military operation began. Call it what you will in Iran. Before I start telling you about what's happening now and the possible ways things might develop, let's talk about who the villain is here. Imagine a regime that shoots, hangs, tortures, and imprisons tens of thousands of its own citizens just for saying, "We want freedom." That's Iran. Imagine a regime that for years keeps repeating, "As soon as we have the bomb, we'll destroy Israel and then America." After October 7th, after the Hamas militants attacked, slaughtered, burned people alive, raped, and killed 1,200 people in Israel, we no longer have the right to consider these promises as propaganda. And now this regime is facing not a UN resolution, not tweets, but real force. What is the goal of the operation? Today's operation by Israel and the U.S. against Iran is not a clash between two sides of a conflict. It's a confrontation of a world where people are given a manual, at most, space for life and freedom, with a world that turns people into obedient slaves of their ideology, their theology. It doesn't matter what it's called. Iran is the main sponsor of terrorism in the world, says Donald Trump, and it will never, ever get nuclear weapons. He repeats this after all the Democratic and Republican presidents of the United States of America. That's exactly the point of the operation. The point is not to punish Iran, but to prevent a regime of murderers from getting an atomic bomb and from passing dirty bombs to terrorists to be detonated in Tel Aviv, Haifa, Jerusalem, and elsewhere around the world. Now, what has already been done? For decades, Israel has warned that if those who openly promise to wipe the Jewish state off the map get an atomic bomb, it will be a second attempt at the Holocaust. We will not allow those who call for our destruction to obtain the means to achieve it, says Benjamin Netanyahu. And who can say that he is not right? They say, as soon as we have this in our hands, we will destroy you. Until then, we are, as they say, gathering, waiting, building up. Well, they are already close. If they are going to destroy us, then it's better to destroy them first. Today, these words turned into strikes on uranium enrichment centers, where that very bomb was being prepared, and on missiles that could carry a nuclear warhead to Tel Aviv tomorrow, or a biological one or a chemical one. Israel and the U.S. are carrying out a major operation against the key infrastructure of the Iranian regime. These are command centers, missile bases, and elements of the nuclear program. This isn't just a slap on the wrist. It's a real attempt to knock the teeth out of a regime that dreams of having a bomb and openly promises to use it. You can speculate whether they will use it or not, but as they say, I wouldn't just sit and wait to see if they do. About 3 weeks ago, the Americans staged the beginning of a war. The world held its breath in anticipation. Alarming headlines filled the media. Satellites recorded unusual troop movements, and the airwaves were filled with fake orders and communication signals. Tehran's defense system went on full combat alert. One by one, radars were activated, launchers were rolled out, and drone control centers were brought online. Encrypted commands of all kinds were being sent out. But suddenly, literally 20 minutes before this supposed attack, everything stopped. The U.S. called off the mobilization, leaving analysts wondering what that was all about. The world breathed a sigh of relief, not suspecting that the operation had a specific hidden objective. The fake war forced Tehran to reveal its entire defense system. Every operating radar, every missile position, every communication link was marked in real time. Now, as the real attack begins, this data becomes the foundation of an operation designed to render the regime toothless, quickly, precisely, and without warning. So what did Iran actually do in response? The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. They announced that all American bases in the region are of interest and are legitimate targets. In the first hours, they targeted Israel and U.S. bases in Qatar, Kuwait, the UAE, United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain. These are strikes on military facilities and symbols of American presence, as if hinting that we prefer to hit soldiers rather than civilians. But everyone understands that this could change at any moment. What is this? Is it still a special military operation or a big war? On paper, Tehran talks about a proportional response limited to military targets. For the first time, Iran is striking both Israel and a whole network of American bases across the Persian Gulf at the same time, while the main strikes are still targeting military facilities. This leaves a chance for controlled escalation. Everything depends on what happens next. In the previous video, I mentioned that this is the easiest scenario. It may not lead to a regime change later, but at the very least, it could lead to what Trump is aiming for, namely Iran abandoning its long-range missile and nuclear weapons program. The line is thin, of course, because if Iran starts systematic strikes on cities or oil infrastructure, tankers, ports, yes, that's no longer a retaliatory operation, but a path to a serious regional war from which there is no graceful way out. We still don't know if the regime will stop, or if it will collapse, pulling half the Middle East down with it. By the way, you can't call them fools at all. Farsi speakers, Persians, they are not stupid at all, and really, no one is stupid. Yes, there are some idiots in the government, it happens, but over there they can be anything but stupid. That's why I suspect that until the very last moment you could kind of turn them back. They'll pretend that they're going all the way to the end. And then at the very, very, very last moment, they'll say, okay, we agree to something. Then they'll drag it out again, deceive, but so to speak, they'll try not to get into a clinch, a military one. So as you understand, Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, these are not allies by chance. They are mercenaries of the regime who are focused on fear and the blood of civilians. Iran hasn't used them yet. More on that later, actually, right while I'm telling you this. That's when it started, but they haven't used them yet. Yes, so to speak. Trump says that Iran is the biggest sponsor of terrorism. I don't agree with him. I believe that the biggest sponsor of terrorism is Russia. Well, the war against Ukraine, the way it's being conducted, strikes on residential areas, support for terrorist and dictatorial regimes around the world. So Iran is second. Well, that's it. It would also be good to deal with the second one and put an end to it. China covers all its actions with smiles and diplomacy, but provides money and political cover to North Korea. There, up to Iran, that's the axis of evil, the new axis of evil. This is, as Ronald Reagan so beautifully put it, a club of regimes for whom people are expendable. Russia calls the strikes by the U.S. and Israel on Iran a premeditated, well-planned, and, of course, unprovoked, how could it be unprovoked, act of armed aggression against a sovereign state. Well, yes. It demands an immediate halt to the operation, warns of the risk of a humanitarian, economic, even revolutionary catastrophe. But what kind of revolutionary catastrophe? After all, Iran doesn't have a bomb, apparently, right? Are they planning to bring a bomb there or something? So they're pushing the idea of an urgent meeting of the UN Security Council. Every time someone suggests an idea regarding Russia, they immediately, so to speak, ban it. Yeah, I mean, they have the right to veto. They use their veto. So they're trying to put all the responsibility for the crisis on Washington and Jerusalem, and China in turn is expressing deep, serious concern. Well, as always, insists on respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Iran. By the way, China, of course, doesn't want to lose Iran as an oil supplier, a client, and so on. They call for an immediate cessation of military actions, avoid using the word aggression, but firmly demand to stop the operation and return to negotiations, relying on diplomacy rather than direct intervention. In other words, neither side. A pair of warships has even arrived in the Strait of Hormuz. And 2 ships from Russia, I think they've arrived. I haven't checked, but 2 Chinese ships were heading there as well. But for now, neither country is taking any action. Like, we'll stand shoulder to shoulder with our brothers and actually stand up for them. So far, none of this has happened. It's just rhetoric, rhetoric, rhetoric. Now Israel has always lived with a gun to its head, and now it wants Iran to live with a gun to its head. Israel would gladly live in peace with Iran, trade, and visit each other. But instead, there's a constant threat. Hezbollah's missiles from the north, Hamas from the south, Iranian drones and saboteurs all over the region. Israel spends enormous resources not on development, but to prevent Iranian proxies from blowing up buses, schools, cafes, and from killing everyone living between the river and the sea, as they keep saying every day. This is not a dispute between 2 nationalisms. This is a small democratic country forced 24/7 to defend itself against a regime whose official ideology is based on destroying this Zionist entity, a regime that doesn't recognize the state of Israel at all. Is there a right to strike or not, no? Right now, we're talking about a short, massive operation against a regime that's on the verge of a nuclear breakthrough. The opposition in the United States is already shouting that Trump had no right to start military action without Congress. But the president's powers as commander-in-chief actually allow him to start military action against an immediate threat and then go to Congress for approval. By the way, 48 hours before the operation began, Secretary of State Rubio gathered the leadership of Congress, the Senate, 8 people, and informed them. I told you about this, explained the goals, and formally the administration fulfilled all its obligations. The leaders of Iran do not hide their goal of destroying Israel and driving them out. Well, they can't destroy the U.S., of course, but they want to drive the U.S. out of the region. After October 7th, we no longer have the moral right to write this off as just rhetoric. What they promise, they strive to carry out. Well, maybe not themselves, maybe through their proxies. Yes, when Iran gets nuclear technology, the question isn't just whether they'll drop the bomb themselves. The question is how quickly they'll start passing materials for dirty bombs to terrorists. Terrorists they're already supplying with rockets, money, and weapons. Setting off a dirty bomb in Tel Aviv, London, or New York would just be a logical continuation of the policy they've been following for decades. If the operation remains short and targeted, without turning into a new Vietnam or Afghanistan, then Trump has a chance to destroy the regime's nuclear infrastructure without getting bogged down in an endless war. And that's a huge plus for him from a domestic policy perspective. But if it all turns into a prolonged regime change campaign, then inside the U.S. there will be a powerful wave of opposition to the authorities and the war. Then in the elections, the Democrats could get a majority in the Senate and the House of Representatives, and half, maybe even 80% of what Trump is trying to do will simply be buried. The West isn't innocent either, ladies and gentlemen. We understand this clearly in America, Israel, and Europe. There is corruption, there is cynicism, there are mistakes, there are thieves, there are liars, but everything is exposed. In comparison against the backdrop of the regimes of Iran, North Korea, Cuba, and Russia, where you can get a bullet for a word and prison for a thought, where freedom is a crime, the Western world looks pure, like the driven snow, as they say, like pure white snow next to a dirty, stinking puddle. Not because the West is perfect, but because here you have a chance to choose, to speak, to argue, to change the government without bloodshed. An operation against Iran is, of course, a risk. Mistakes are inevitable. Escalation is possible. But if we just say this is not our business, we will wake up in a world where the largest sponsor of terrorism has nuclear weapons and a network of terrorists with dirty bombs in suitcases all over the world. And then we'll talk. Israel cannot afford such an experiment, America cannot, and no sane person wherever they live can either. That's why this isn't abstract geopolitics, but a fight for whether our children will have the right to live, not just survive under the dictates of new empires of slaves. And yet there is hope in this story, because every authoritarian regime falls sooner or later. The end usually doesn't come from bombs, but from their own decay and the courage of their people. The Iranian regime must and can fall, and most importantly, it can fall not only under external pressure, but at the hands of the Iranians themselves. Those very people who are being beaten, tortured, and imprisoned today for the word freedom. It always happens when a so-called strong country collapses. Yes, Iran is a strong country, maybe not a superpower, but it is a strong country. It's usually a combination of many factors, including both external and internal ones, but the internal factor must always be present. We can hope that if the Iranian army sides with the opposition and refuses to defend the regime, it will open the way for real change of power. The security apparatus that the mullahs and the IRGC rely on today will split, and the balance of power will instantly shift in favor of those who want freedom. If the army remains loyal to the Ayatollahs and the Revolutionary Guards, the regime will most likely hold on, suppress the protests, and survive the current crisis, and then the future of the region and the world will be left hanging in the balance between the slow slide toward a nuclear Iran and new wars that will have to be stopped not with words but with force. Let's hope that the Iranian people will be able to resolve this situation on their own without a long and costly war. I don't just mean money, it's their right to change the government in their own country. I wish them luck and patience. I'm looking forward to a new, or actually the old Iran, a friend of Israel, a highly developed society. Until next time. To be continued.